A thread by Carlos Osuida. I want to answer a question asked by Magic Markers 1, but first, an illustration of some of the many reasons I'm a rabid supporter of real Donald Trump. This is one of the greatest cover songs in the history of popular music. Link in the thread to the Cleverleys cover of the Bangles' Walk Like an Egyptian. It is wonderful. Check it out. The Cleverleys are performance artists. They pretend to be a family, but the band has had several different members. This is the best iteration. They do what Trump does. They hide their virtuosity. And they're staggeringly original, innovative, and funny, like Trump. I live for originality. Compare these guys to Cardi B. Different dimensions. So, here's the question I was asked. The framers were right. At Magic Markers 1 on Twitter asks, I gotta say, Carlos, I was convinced that there was to be no debate. I've tweeted several times about it and even offered a preemptive apology if I were wrong. My question now is, why go through all this for Biden? Malleable, corrupted, absolute desperation? Carlos responds. The short answer is that they never took Trump into consideration, exactly like in 2016. And of course, they had no idea that Biden would develop dementia so rapidly. They convinced themselves that Obama is beloved, so his vice president should be a shoo-in. Leftists care only about words, not actions. And that's the main way Trump defeated them. He made no effort to change his persona after he got elected. Instead, he delivered. And it worked. Look, link in the thread to a walk-away video with a bunch of people talking about how they switched from the Democrat Party. These are not conservatives. These are leftists. Carlos continues. Seriously, can you even begin to grasp the courage it took this person to change? And the moral clarity? And then to make an ad? Trump fooled the Democrats by delivering. He also used fake leaks to present himself as chaotic and incompetent. And finally, Trump's Judas goats have been deliberately giving the Democrats terrible advice for years. The Democrats have conditioned themselves to never accept that Trump can win. Let me tell you about an experiment I did on myself. I always wondered why involuntary expressions of pain are different for every culture and language. We say, ow. The obvious answer is that these expressions are learned. So I conditioned myself to change my, quote, involuntary expression of pain. Instead of ow, I conditioned myself to say al. I used the same pronunciation as the al in Arabic. It's not the same as Al Bundy. The A is an ah, and it worked. It became involuntary. It took only a couple of months. I did it for a few months. Then I changed it back to ow. So I proved that a person can condition themselves. Al became my natural expression of pain. I didn't even think about it. When I hurt myself, al came out. Leftists conditioned themselves to never see Trump as a threat. No amount of reasoning with them would work. Only people with courage and integrity could force themselves to break free from the conditioning. The stakes are too high for the Democratic Party to admit that it is doomed, so it plows ahead toward its destruction. History is full of examples of leaders and armed forces doing this. When you hold your enemy in contempt, you always pay for it. Understanding the enemy is a fatal mistake. So now, the Democrats are running a candidate with dementia. But that's not all that's wrong with him. He's got totally numb feet. Before he walks, he looks at his feet. And both staffers carefully watch his feet. The person on the cell phone is giving orders, some form of teleconferencing. Look at Biden, paying close attention. The reason this insanity is happening is that it's the logical endpoint of leftist ideology. Every single leftist government fails because the ideology itself is not rooted in reality. Did you see this? From Forbes.com, California to ban new gas-powered cars by 2035. This is being praised. Newsom said that by banning gasoline-powered passenger vehicles, he'll force people to come up with viable alternatives. The only thing this order will do is make California even more of a failed state. The state has already said that the electrical grid will never be able to handle recharging that many electric cars. And even if the entire United States goes back to donkey carts, it'll make no difference on the climate. So California will go red in the next couple of years. Leftism is not rooted in reality, and that is why Trump will be reelected in a historic landslide. The worst thing that ever happened to the Nazis was Hitler. He forced them to do things that ensured their defeat. Hitler was not rational. His demands were not rooted in reality. The only reason the Nazis did so well until 1943 was a total lack of preparation among the Allies. And the Allies were not prepared because their pre-war beliefs were not rooted in reality. People think that unilateral disarmament is somehow morally superior. Tell that to all the Americans who had to fight with obsolete weapons until late 1943. It's criminal what all the Allies did. Trump has the right idea. Peace through superior firepower and economic leverage. By the time the Nazis had lost the war, 2 years before the fighting stopped, Hitler was forcing the war machine to spend time on insane ideas that had zero chance of working. When your tank is too heavy for all paved roads and all bridges, it's worthless. But Hitler was as physically ill as so many democratic leaders. And he was hooked on speed and morphine. And his diet was horrible. So he lost. So bye-bye, Democrats.
I will be the greatest president that God ever created.